Got a 1-hour TV show, 1 hour. And quite frankly, it's all I got, all right? I put everything into it, and it's a lot of work. It's not the hardest job in the world, but it takes some work. But I did some math, and it looks like Donald Trump has a job that is 975 trillion times harder than this one. Yet, look at all that energy, huh? I mean, it is absolutely amazing, and we will never see anything like this again. A very, very unique president, a very, very unique human being, and he's still fighting for us. He is fighting for us. Now, we have to fight for him, folks, and we are relying on our elected representatives to do that. Some, well, some I like. And Ted Cruz this weekend came forward, finally, to say that he will object and he's going to call for a commission to look into voting irregularity. Look, I like Ted Cruz. I admire Ted Cruz. I don't know if I exactly trust Ted Cruz, okay? Ted, we could have used him maybe a little bit earlier in all of this. He's picking his words very, very carefully. I don't know if he's personally convinced of the voter fraud that we all know about. Nevertheless, it's probably a step in the right direction. There are a couple of things that could happen this week. You may have heard of this. It's an obscure law from 1887, the Electoral Count Act of 1887. Well, it's confusing, very, very confusing. But one provision would allow for debate about these electoral votes to be had if a member of the House steps forward along with a senator and they put it in writing, and then there will be a 2-hour debate. Now, it depends how you read this thing. That 2 hours could potentially be stretched out way beyond that. But this law is, I don't know, it's never been tested. It's very, very old, and it contradicts itself. There are folks who believe in and of itself it's unconstitutional. Here's an example. If more than one return or paper purporting to be a return from a state shall have been received by the President of the Senate, those votes and those only shall be counted which shall have been regularly given by the electors who are shown by the determination mentioned in Section 2 of this Act to have been appointed if the determination in said section provided for shall have been made or by such successors or substitutes. It goes on like this. And constitutional scholars are truly baffled by it. And they don't think, quite frankly, there's a lot of hope in this. So what else is out there? Well, you do know that 7 states have been contested. 7 states. I think we have a list of them. They're all over the country. These are electorally rich states, and we believe there are serious problems in what happened in these states. And everyone on here, there are alternate slates of electors, uncertified, but there are slates of electors for Donald Trump. And now that state capitals are back from holiday vacation, maybe they don't need a special session to come together and make a decision to decertify or certify the Donald Trump electors. Look, this is something that's being at least explored. It all comes down, most likely, though, to Vice President Mike Pence. Vice President Pence. On January 6th, when these votes are counted, he's the one who does the counting. He will be the president of the Senate on that day. And according to constitutional scholars that we both know and have been on this show, he has almost absolute authority. He might be able to dismiss electors if perhaps they come from a place like Pennsylvania, and there are grave concerns that perhaps millions of votes were cast against that state's own constitution.
I know we all got our doubts about the last election. And I want to assure you, I share the concerns of millions of Americans about voting irregularities. And I promise you, come this Wednesday, we'll have our day in Congress. We'll hear the objections. We'll hear the evidence.
That's promising. We will hear the objections. We will hear the evidence. And then what will he do? What can he do after that? It's up for constitutional debate, perhaps, but a lot of us have high hopes for Mike Pence. Mike Pence, our vice president. This might be his time. Let's face it, he's had a pretty good run as vice president, which is a cushy job. You get your own house, you get Air Force Two. He's been a man in the background. He has not undermined President Trump in any way that we can see. I have heard grumblings from time to time that maybe he could have been a bit more forceful in defending this president. Let's see what happens the day after tomorrow, January 6th, when Mike Pence will stand as the president of the United States Senate, and under the 12th Amendment, it will be up to him to count the electoral votes. And according to many constitutional scholars, he has broad authority in what votes to count and perhaps what votes not to count. We shall see. We shall see. Meanwhile, if you're like me, maybe you are frustrated. Well, you're frustrated with Democrats, of course, but are you frustrated with Republicans? Where have they been? There are a lot of Republican office holders who probably would sleep better at night if Donald Trump had just lost the election outright on November 3rd, or if he just moves on January 20th. So much of the swamp is designed for that. You know, this clip actually gives me an ounce more respect for Hillary Clinton. I want to show you.
Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances, because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win.
Okay, you've probably seen that clip before. It's kind of famous by now. Something even more interesting than what Hillary said, it's the reaction of this person right here. I want to show you again. When she says Joe Biden should never concede, look at her. This is Jen Palmieri, major league Democratic strategist, worked for Obama. That's what she does. Arms up in the air, never concede. You know what? I admire their fight. This is months before the election, and they were planning already. You compare that to some of our famous Republicans. How about Jeb Bush? Fell all over himself congratulating President-elect Biden. Remember the telegram or the tweet? Jeb Bush was just all in. Congratulations to the president-elect. I have prayed for our president most of my adult life. I'll be praying for you and your success. I.e. message, Jeb Bush did not pray for Donald Trump, apparently. That's what he wants us to know. Seems to be taking it very, very personally. All the Bushes do, and so many in the swamp do. It's all about feelings, their egos, and money. A lot of money. All right, meanwhile, try to ignore the mainstream media. I know the drumbeat can be depressing, and every now and then you ask yourselves, are we crazy? I mean, are they all that bad? Answer is, yes, they are all that bad.
Mr. Trump has refused to concede the election. He and his allies have declared widespread fraud where none exists.
He's supposed to be neutral. Chuck Todd. Widespread fraud where none exists. Have you noticed how they framed it, by the way? At first, no fraud whatsoever. And then they brought that to no widespread fraud. Well, here's evidence of fraud. Well, that's debunked. Okay, well, here's some evidence. That's unverified. That's what they say all the time. More from Meet the Swamp.
And tried and failed in court to overturn Joe Biden's victory, with plenty of Trump-appointed judges turning away their nonsense lawsuits.
Nonsense lawsuits. These were not nonsense lawsuits. And by the way, the ones that have been dismissed almost across the board were dismissed on technicalities, on standing, but not on the merits, not what is actually inside those lawsuits. It's amazing. They call people like you and me traitors because we support lawsuits that are being filed, lawsuits and parliamentary maneuvers in the United States Senate. We're not rioting in the streets. More on that in a moment. So, common sense tells all of us that there's no way Joe Biden got more votes than any presidential candidate in history. I mean, look at it. It was pathetic, totally pathetic. And all that time in the basement and all these phony non-events, it just doesn't add up. But again, they accuse us. They call us the worst names in the world because we think this thing should be investigated. We think lawsuits should be heard. We think judges should see the evidence. Are we really that bad? What about all the people who are attempting to ruin, literally ruin our country over the summer? Billions and billions of dollars worth of damage during the riots. You remember, it was awful. Now, these forces, by the way, who really look out to destroy America, were celebrated, totally celebrated by the mainstream media, by Democrat politicians. President Obama even said, oh, it's good, they're making people uncomfortable. Yet we just want our lawsuits heard. We just want this investigated peacefully. And they say that we're undermining democracy. Doesn't add up at all. I want to show you something from, this is November 7th. This is from November 7th. This is the day that the fake news declared Joe Biden the winner of the election. Now, you'll remember, everybody was putting up plywood. We were preparing for a Donald Trump victory, because if Donald Trump had won outright on November 3rd, everybody was anticipating riots. That probably would have happened. As it turns out, on November 7th, a few days later, the networks called Joe Biden the victor. I remember it well. I was watching TV, and then I heard commotion outside my window. I grabbed my phone, took a video, and offered a little bit of commentary at the same time. They're celebrating because they think Biden won. Networks are calling Pennsylvania for Biden. But it doesn't work that way. Empty streets. A peaceful celebration, that's nice. But if Donald Trump had been declared the victor, what would have happened? And let's not fool ourselves. One of the reasons why some of these judges and some of these politicians are so timid right now, they're afraid of the mob. They're afraid of the riots. You know, today I saw a beautiful picture of Washington, D.C. I used to live in this town for 4 years. Washington, D.C., it's a swamp. Half of it's corrupt. But wow, it is a beautiful, beautiful city. And I was proud to live there. But I'm also proud to say the underpinnings of Washington and our country are not swamp-like. They're beautiful. Our founding fathers, the designers of the United States Constitution, that document is amazing and should inspire countries all over the world. That is the bedrock of our country, not the mob. This week, I think we're going to find out what is stronger, our adherence to our bedrock values or fear of people who start fires and break things. Let's see what happens, folks.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.